Join me on this video as I discuss my favourite subject in the whole universe. Me.
Oh, seriously?
Hey guys, and welcome to this Q&A episode with myself, 6plus Stevo. So recently in the community section of my channel, I put a post up asking the viewers and subscribers to ask me anything. And you get responded with many questions, which I will be answering in today's video, starting right now. In our first question, the Gitman asks, I've always wondered, if you were to come up with a custom Bad Moon paint scheme, what colours would you use aside from the typical black and yellow? Well, Gitman, that's a very good question. Black and yellow is my colour scheme, and I think it works really well. The black and the yellow contrast really nice, and I think it makes a really vibrant colour scheme, especially against the green orc skin, and I've always been drawn to it, so I always knew I was going to do Bad Moons. But if I wasn't going to do black and yellow, something that's still very Bad Moon, it's got to be gold. I'd do gold. Yeah, gold would look great, I think. And I've toyed with the idea a little bit, and I utilise a bit of gold within my army. Some of my orcs have some sort of gold chains and gold. They've all got gold piercings as well. They've got there's little flashes of gold in amongst my army. But I have toyed with the idea of doing characters and things in gold armour. I particularly like the idea of orcs looting custodians and taking some of their armour, or at least seeing custodians, seeing how effective they are, and then, you know, a Bad Moon seeing that and being drawn to that and wanting to emulate that, I think would be great. And yeah, orcs, Bad Moons are very much known for their love of gold, which is very unusual. It's certainly not shared amongst the other orc clans, because gold is in effect to an orc a useless metal. It has no value to an orc, but to Bad Moons they love the bling bling of the gold. And our second question, also from the Gitman, he asks, what suddenly caused you to start making Space Marines a part of your hobby time? Were you simply taking a break from orcs, or were you just wanting to try out something new? Well, Gitman, the reason I started doing Space Marines was a couple of reasons. First off, when Leviathan came out, I was massively impressed with the Ballistus Dreadnought and the new, very sexy Terminator sculpts. My god, they are gorgeous, absolutely stunning miniatures. What a perfect way to update old miniatures and bring them up to date. And yeah, that got me really inspired and excited. But the real reason was because I came by them essentially for free. A local store near me was selling off a load of the Leviathan boxes dirt cheap. I was getting them for £50 per box. So I bought 3 of them. I sold off the majority of the contents and the books and whatnot to friends and people I knew, and on eBay and things, and made a profit on those boxes, and was able to be left with enough parts. I think I kept 1 Ballistus Dreadnought and 2 sets of the Terminators, along with the Captain in Terminator armour and the Librarian in Terminator armour. So I have a very small Terminator focused Space Marine army, and I'm going to build upon that. I do plan to get another squad of Terminators, some more of the Redemptor scale Dreadnoughts, and most likely a Chaplain in Terminator armour, because I've seen that miniature as well, and that miniature is rather sexy. And yeah, I'm just going to run a homebrew chapter of a pure Terminator first company. A first company of a custom chapter is what I'm going to do. I'm still thinking up a name for the chapter at the moment, and yeah, it'll be a fun sort of little sideline project. I think they'll be quite quick and easy to paint up in a simple colour scheme, and it'll just create a nice diversion from orcs and just give me another thing to work on. before doing this channel a long time ago, I used to have multiple armies. I had, at one point, I had a large Necron army, I had a fairly sizable Tyrannid army, another Ork army before this one, and a rather large Chaos Black Legion Lost and the Damned army as well. And I also tinkered with other things. I tinkered with Catachans and various bits. So it's only really once I started doing this channel was I sort of really exclusively Orks. But yeah, that's why anyway that I've just started doing Space Marines on the side. But don't worry, anyone watching this channel is always going to be Ork focused. Orks are always going to be my primary passion and love. And the Space Marines are just a little sort of sideline act to the Orks. Hodgie873 asks the next question. What's your favourite piece of lore you have for your Bad Moons War? Loving creating some interesting lore for my war. There is lore behind my Broken Tooth tribe, and it's a difficult question to answer, this one. And the reason for that is because the lore's not really finished. It's not really fleshed out, so I can only really skim over it and give you the basics. It's still something I'm working on. I'm still developing names for characters, and I'm still sort of really fleshing out that backstory and stuff of the tribe and the characters within the tribe. Obviously, any long-time subscribers of the show are aware of Bob the Brave. Bob's lore is... I don't want to say too much on this because I'm planning in the future to do lore videos for the Broken Tooth tribe and all the characters within it and the units within it. But essentially, Bob got his name because in his earliest days he used to work down in the drops, and his main job was to retrieve stuff that Orks had dropped in the drops. Like if an Ork dropped his favourite chopper or some teeth or his favourite shooter or whatever down in the drops, then Bob would be sent down to retrieve said item under penalty of a damn good kicking. And so he would go in there, swim around in the sludge and the slime and the sewage to find the said item, and then be winched back up. And while he was down there, the Orks would find it hilarious that he would sort of bob about in the water, and that's essentially how he got his name. So all the Orks from the tribe came to know him as Bob. But Bob then later on climbs up through the ranks, through the sort of grot society within the tribe, and through various cunning and sneaky means keeps managing to survive the most horrendous of battles and events, and is quite often the only one living to tell the tale. And so a lot of the grots in the tribe have come to sort of respect him and are drawn to him because they believe his lies, essentially. And then there's obviously Gashnak Goldtooth, the Grand Warlord of the Broken Tooth tribe, and he sits atop, leading all his generals and other bosses. He came to power by usurping Snogrod Flamespitter, the old war boss of the Broken Tooth tribe, and he now keeps him around as his second in command, is like one of his generals. And then the real lore behind the workings of the leadership within the tribe is that actually it's neither Snogrod or Gashnak that really lead the army. It is in fact a Big Mech who is the real brains, the real cunning brains behind the tribe and its schemes. And he's really running things from the background, and he's sort of whispers in the ears of the Ork war bosses and the knobs and things, and it's him that really decides who's in charge by more cunning, sneaky means. But he doesn't even have a name yet. This character, who is so vital in my tribe. I've scribbled down names, then I've written them down, and I've gone, nah, I'm not really feeling that. Until a name really hits me, and I'm like, yes, that's his name. I will then go with that. It is something. I'm working on the lore. The lore is in my head. It's changed a few times within my head and developed and things. So until I've really got it nailed down, I don't really want to reveal too much because it's all subject to change. Obviously the names of the characters I have currently will remain the same because they're the names. I love the names, that they fitting. But yeah, I name a lot of stuff within my tribe. There's quite a few characters that have names, and there are all my mobs have names. So every unit in my army has a name. The shooter boys are called imaginatively the Daka boys. My tank busters are called the Wrecking Crew. We've got Snap, Crackle and Pop, obviously. They're soon to be joined by Crash, Bang and Wallop. We got the Six Pack. And onwards, you know, all the characters and things have names. So and I think that's really important. I would encourage everyone to do that and develop names and things for your, you know, I know some people will literally name every single miniature within their army. I haven't gone to those lengths, and I'm very unlikely to. But yeah, certain characters and at least every vehicle and every squad will get a name in my tribe. When I add to them, they will always get names. Next question from a good friend of the channel, Idic Beer. What are your top 3 most memorable games of 40k you have ever played? That's a really tough question. That's a really hard question to nail it down to just 3. Because it's not necessarily the entire games, it's more moments from games that stand out in my mind. I mean, one particular game that will always live in my memory is the big war boss battle that we had in the first war boss meet. I'll pop a link actually up in the corner and down in the description. Please go and check that battle report out because it was fantastic. One I'm particularly proud of. In where all 6 of the bosses, we divided into 2 teams of 3, and we had at it a big 9,000 point bat rep, and yeah, that was very, very cool. That was just such a fun game, and it went on for ages. We had to have a break and go to bed and then carry it on the next day, and but yeah, absolutely brilliant. It was a fantastic game, and yeah, that was such a good game. Some epic moments in that game. Yeah, that was a real memorable one and a real fun one and a really important one, a real happy memory for me. Some of my games against you, Nick, have been very memorable. We've had some really, really fun battles. I've had the pleasure of playing against some really cool people. I've had my games against Voldemort have been really good. The very first game me and Voldemort played was a really, really fun game. I'm pretty sure Voldemort beat me quite convincingly, but I didn't care because it was so much fun. And then just going back years, a lot of in sort of 4th and 5th edition had some really fun games back then, some really tight games. My old arch nemesis, Reroll Joe, and his Space Marines, me and him used to have some epic battles. My Necrons against his Space Marines, we had some really, really close, tense games over the years. And he would win, then I would win, then he would win. So it was just a real arms race, and a lot of those games stand out. But yeah, I think that the big mega boss battle with the war bosses would probably be the number 1 game that stands out in my memory. Jekron40k asks, what is your favourite type of orc from fiction? Lord of the Rings, World of Warcraft, etc. It's got to be, in terms of sort of, are we talking like outside of the 40k universe, basically outside of Games Workshop, because they would be my favourite orcs. I think Games Workshop orcs for me, above like Dungeons and Dragons orcs and Lord of the Rings orcs even, are for me the ultimate orcs. They're bigger, they're brutish, the lore behind them is fantastic, the comedy and stuff behind them, the savagery, everything about them. It's such a deep lore that has been going for so many years now, and it's just there's so many characters and stuff, so that would really be my answer. But outside of that, which is the question I think you're asking, it's got to be Lord of the Rings orcs. It has to be. And for me, probably a character that is really only in the movies would be Lurtz from the Fellowship, the leader of the Uruk-hai orcs, because he was just a total badass and he was just cool as fuck. And I only just watched that movie again recently actually with my daughter, and the scene where he kills Boromir And then that fight scene with Aragorn afterwards is just epic. It's a fast, quick fight, but my God, it's just like, it's adrenaline pumping, and he's just such a badass. From the very moment he's born, and he's born choking out another orc, and he's just, yeah, he's cool as fuck. And so yeah, probably like the Uruk-hai, Lord of the Rings orcs, but then a lot of the Mordor orcs as well. Gothmog was really cool as well. Yeah, Lord of the Rings orcs for me. James Fads 6569 asks, considering Speed Freaks / Evil Sons is still a usable detachment choice for an orc army, would you want, and do you think we'll ever get a Wazdakka Gutsmech sculpt? I'm massively biased, love the red ones. The answer to that is who knows. It's Games Workshop, who knows. My suspicion is yes, at some point, because they do like dipping into their back catalogue. Thank God, and I'm glad they do that, and I really hope they continue to do that. But there's no guarantee of that. I really think they should. I think every clan should be represented by at least one character in the codex, and I think it's a real shame that nowadays we just constantly losing named characters. Yes, we've gained some new ones or re-release of old ones, but there's just so many. I mean, I uploaded a short just very recently actually with Wazdakka being on that. You've got Wazdakka, you've got Nazdreg, you've got old Zogwart, and loads more besides, loads more. And then characters that have been named and stuff that they've never had a sculpt and never been released. Like Tusker, for example, Demon Killer. I mean, he would be hugely popular if they were to release an official miniature and rules for someone like that. But yeah, Wazdakka Gutsmech, he of course, they should definitely release him. And I would love to see what their modern take on that would be. And you can imagine it would be a really epic sculpt and a really awesome kit. And for any Evil Sons / Speed Freak players, it would be a must buy for sure. We've got the Gitman again with another question. Pushing in the queue there, Gitman. How would Gashnak Goldtooth react to seeing Ghazghkull suddenly arrive on his planet, demanding that Gashnak pledge himself to the prophet of Gork and Morg? Well, he would not have any of that. No, it's just not going to happen. He certainly not without a fight anyway. I think in typical orc fashion, what would happen there would be a showdown, and in all honesty, Ghazi probably would win. In fact, it's very likely that Ghazi would win over Gashnak. Gashnak is not the most intelligent, even for an orc war boss. He is in leadership because he is brutishly strong. He has a foul temper, and but he's got a massive ego, a huge ego. I don't know anyone else like that. But yeah, he's so he has his faults, Gashnak does, and like I said before earlier in this episode, he's not the brains of the outfit. So I don't really think. I mean, in a straight up fight with Ghazi, he'll give him a good go. I mean, it won't be an easy victory for Gaz. He'll give him a damn good fight. And he's got a puncher's chance in like boxing terms. You know, he wouldn't be the favourite, but he'd be in with a shot. But no, he certainly wouldn't just, you know, sign on the dotted line and jump into bed with Ghazi. No sir, would he not. That would be far too damaging for Gashnak's ego, and he could just not tolerate that. But I think if he was beaten down and eventually submitted, I think he would begrudgingly join. I think what would be more likely to happen is that he would strike a deal. He'd be like, look, I'm not joining you, but you're welcome to make a purchase. You know, we've got many dreads and cans and things, or we can hire our services out to you for a price. Because yeah, he's going to be wanting some of those teeth, which Ghazi has been known to do in the past with Nazdreg example. They have allied, and he's hired the services of Nazdreg before, so I don't think Ghazi would. I think that's the likely outcome actually. I think he would be like, look, we'll fight with you, but it's going to cost you. Give us some teeth. and we'll see what we can do. And I think Gazzy would be a fool not to take him up on that offer, because the Broken Tooth tribe are just the best tribe in the galaxy. And what war boss wouldn't want to hire the services of the Broken Tooth tribe and their dread mob? Pig Gibbon asks, as non-Goth Orks player, would you ever run Gazgol? I like the idea of a massive war boss, but I play Death Skulls, and painting in blue doesn't seem right. Seems like a great kit bash project to make a Gaz-sized boss to run as Gaz, but not using the standard model. Great question, great question. I have Gazzy still on the sprue. I've had him for a couple of years now and not built him. For this very reason, he doesn't really fit in with my army. And I don't hate the miniature. It's not the way I would have updated Gazzy, personally. There are faults with the miniature, and it doesn't really do it for me. Having said that, I think there is something that can be done with that kit, and I've toyed with the idea of converting him up and doing a Bad Moon style big boss with him in a sort of a, not make a Nazdreg, but in a sort of a nod to Nazdreg, and swap out his gun, swap out his claw, his head and stuff, but keep the main sort of body of him that big bulky shape, but just modify it and make it more of a Bad Moon boss, and then just run it as Gazzy in game, but give him a different name and a different look. That's a great question, and I think that's probably what I will end up doing with him, is sort of running him as a sort of a Nazdreg inspired boss, because like the Roar of Mork could be anything. It doesn't have to be the big chain gun that he's got. I quite like the idea of swapping that weapon out for more of a custom mega cannon style weapon, and maybe make the claw something a little bit more big mech looking rather than stabby Wolverine power claw kind of thing. And and just sort of, I don't know, maybe making him a little bit more boxy, less rounded, I think. I think there's definitely something that can be done there with that miniature, and at some point in the future, no time soon, but at some point in the future, I'll most likely do something like that with it. Marcos Castellanos 4114 asks, what game would you be playing if you didn't play 40k? Good question, Marcus, good question. There's many games that I have an interest in and am drawn to and would consider. X-Wing looks very, very good. I hear very good things about X-Wing. I think the miniatures for that are really, really nice, and I would quite like to collect some of them. So that game's always drawn me in. I've played Battletech. I have a few Battletech miniatures. I enjoy that game. I would never get into that, I don't think, in a big way. It's a fun game, and I think some of the miniatures are cool, but it doesn't really have enough. I don't know. The variety. I need more. I need characters. I need characters rather than sort of faceless, just robots and things to really draw me into the story and things. And Star Wars Legion looks good, but again, it feels quite limiting because I feel it quite restrictive. Age of Sigmar, I think it looks quite fun. Warhammer: The Old World, I would definitely get into sort of the fantasy side of things. So if you're talking not just non-Games Workshop and non 40k, then I'd probably most likely go into fantasy. I think AOS probably. Trying to think of other games that I'd be interested in playing. There's lots out there. I can't remember them all. One Page Rules, I'd give that a whirl. I'm up for trying all sorts of games and things, really, but I don't think there's much else out there in the sort of the game systems. I think in many cases are probably better than 40k from a rules perspective, but from lore, many of the other game systems out there for me, they just don't have it. They don't have that depth and the history of lore to draw from, and we've got so many factions and so much going on in 40k that there's something there for everyone, isn't there? You know, there's so that, and yeah, so I think 40k will always be my primary game, but yeah, I'm interested in other games, but it's hard to pick one that I would go with. It would probably be fantasy or AOS. Tommy McCartney asks, let us pretend that the 11th starter box will be Orks versus Marines. What is on the wish list for Orks in that set? Keep in mind they will be monopose, one-off sculpts. Yeah, monopose sculpts. I have no issue with that in starter sets. I think it makes sense for starter sets. It's probably the only time, and named characters and starter sets. That's the only time I really don't have an issue with something being mono build. Otherwise, it's a big for me with any kit. I like options and, you know, different head options and posability in kits. I think that's massively important and something that's kind of under threat. But yeah, in a starter set, what would I like to see for a starter set Ork army? Well, I mean, I think it's hard to do better than Black Reach. Black Reach just nailed it. They really did nail it with that set. You got the Black Reach War Boss that looked great at the time. You had all them Slugger Chopper Boys. You had a fantastic set of knobs in there. The Death Copters were brilliant. And the Marine stuff was good as well at the time. The Marines in there and the Captain and the Dreadnought. All really, really good stuff. And so it's hard to do better than that. I would probably want something very similar to that. I think, yeah, I mean, I think just with a starter set, just go with the basics. I think boys with maybe like an alternative Death Dread, I think. You know, boys, a boss, probably some knobs, or maybe even some Gretchen. I think Gretchen would be great. And you need something big in there, don't you? You need something, you know, a sort of centerpiece thing, and I think a Death Dread would be great, like a mono build snap fit Death Dread that you could have that would be, you know, a slight variation from the existing one. That's probably what I would go with. But yeah, I think for someone starting out Orks, I think a good core of boys, knobs, grots, a boss to lead them. That's it. You're off and running then, and then you can start adding some toys to it later. And the Black Reach set was a great example of how to do that right. Tara's Ballet 6356, I think I've got that name right, asks, what games besides 40k do you prefer? Also, what do you think about the war in Ukraine? Wow, Tara, yeah, not messing about with this question, are you? Well, we've just kind of answered the first half of that question in the previous one. What do I think about the war in Ukraine? Well, this is a game about this is a channel rather about 40k Orks, and not a political channel. So I'm very apprehensive to answer that, really. And my view on it would be very much the same as the view of almost any war. Is it would be better if it wasn't happening, and it would be better if people weren't dying, and it would just be nice for it to stop. And I think I'll just leave it there. Malignus the Undying King 6096 asks, how's the work going on your battle fortress? Can't wait to see it on the table. Well, Malignus, the work does continue. It's kind of halted because other projects are on the go. There's just so many projects on the go. I'm looking over at some of them now. You know, projects within the hobby and projects for the channel as well as other stuff. And yeah, so it's partially built, and it is something that I do intend to carry on working on, and I will carry on working on it, and I am excited to get it done. But I want to do it right and not soon, if you know what I mean. I don't want to do it quickly. I want to do it right. I really want to build that thing correctly, and it's a bit of a bitch to build, if I'm honest with you. It's got some serious cleanup, but I've been working on it, and yeah, it's sort of to a stage now where I can sort of hold it together and have it there almost built and sort of it's starting to take shape. But yeah, there's still quite a lot of work to do on it, and it's also I'm sort of deciding, am I going to paint this thing in sub-assemblies? I think there's parts of it that just have to be done in sub-assemblies, which is that's going to slow the process down as well. But yes, I also really want to get it on the table because it is probably my favourite Ork kit of all time, and yeah, I need to get it done, don't I really do. It'll make a great centrepiece for the army. Tommy McCartney asks with another question, rumour has it that Orks are in the next kill team box against Ratlings and Ogrins. If so, what would you want the Ork team to be? So, Ork kill team box. Well, we've had Commandos already, haven't we? And GW did a fantastic job with them. They are beautiful miniatures, really nice miniatures. So they're out because they're not going to do Commandos again. I've heard people talking about the possibility of them doing Tank Busters. I don't think that's a viable thing for Kill Team, because unless they did something with vehicles, and if they're against Ratlings and Ogrins, the Tank Busters aren't going to be any use in that environment, so I don't think it would be Tank Busters. Knobs would be cool. You know, like an elite kill team of like knobs, that would be pretty cool. I think that would be cool. And well, look, I'll tell you what, you're coming up, if it is indeed true that they're going to go up against Ratlings and Ogrins, how about Gretchen and knobs? That would be cool. The Grots kit is kind of due an update, really. I like the kit personally. I think some people don't seem to like the kit. I think it's a great kit. I think the Grots in it look great. The Runt Herd looks great. But it is limited. It's only got very small amounts of sort of modularity and stuff to it. It's quite restrictive, really, what you can do with it. So I think newer sculpts for Grots would be really cool. And in a kill team environment, they could get really creative with them and the Runt Herd and stuff, and then some knobs, I think, because knobs, they really, each knob is like a character within himself, so they're perfect for kill team. And I think that would make a great counterpoint. Ratlings and Ogrins against Gretchen and knobs. I'd buy that set in a heartbeat. Next question from Oitz. If you were to start a new 40k army, what faction besides Orks would you choose? Well, as you already know from the question earlier, I have started a Space Marine army. There are many, mate. There are many. There's lots of armies I like. Chaos would be one. I would love to do a Lost and the Damned themed army again, with lots of mutants and lots of like renegades and cultists, and yeah, I would really like to do that again. Tyranids have always been something that I'm interested in. A full-on, purely melee focused Tyranid army would be great fun. Slanesh as well, that would be really cool to do. There's the Catachan Jungle Fighters still appeal to me. I would just never be able to do it. I couldn't paint, because I would go really heavy on the infantry and not have a huge amount of vehicles. It would be very heavy infantry army, and the amount of minis I'd have to paint to do that would be tough going. There's not many factions I wouldn't consider doing, really. It's probably easier to sort of say what armies I wouldn't collect. That would be Pansies, Sisters of Battle, and Tau. Yeah, I'd have no interest in collecting any of them, really. But pretty much almost every other faction I've got an interest in to some degree or another. Even Leagues of Votan look quite cool. Yeah, there's tons, loads of all the different factions I would be interested in. Monkey in a Panzer asks, any thoughts on the things mentioned in the lore sections of the Ork Codex this edition? Stand out to me was the near paragraph just on Ork tanks and tank divisions, but zero official tank units to even use after they all went to Legends. Just teasing, or do some of those old vehicles have a chance to come back in plastic? You've got sort of two questions in one there, haven't you? So in terms of within the lore within the Codex, I really liked the story of was it Narbrag, the Runt Herd. I really like the story of on the asteroid, where the leagues of Votan had, I think, crashed into the asteroid, or they were like invading the Ork-held rock, and they and you know, the Orks are all disorientated because they've been hit with, I don't know, bombardments or whatever, and Votan are all coming in to steal their ore and all their minings, and Narbrag is wakes up and sort of stirs up his grots. He's like, right, you gits, like, you know, go and wake the others up, or I'm going to give you all a good kick in. Like, we need to fight them off. And he wakes up the killer cans and everything, and his big squig, his big prized squig, Big Tooth, I think it's called. And he stirs all the grots up, and there's this moment where he looks out and he sees the stunties being attacked by his grots, and he gets this like real sense of pride in his runts and that. And I thought it was cool. It was a cool little story, actually. It's a couple of pages long, and it was that was the one that sort of stood out for me. Other than that, just the little bit of lore background on the Bad Moons, where it yet again mentions Nazdreg, talks about that they've got this kill order out on him, and that whatever he's up to now, he's clearly up to no good, and it's sure to spell doom for the galaxy. So in every codex they bring out, they always hint at Nazdreg, and it's inevitable that one day we're going to get that miniature and those rules, and it's going to be a glorious day, and you're going to see a very happy face on this channel when that happens. What was the next part of your question again? Oh yes, about old vehicles coming back. In terms of things like looted wagons and stuff, it's possible, but I don't know. I think the chances of the Orks getting a tank of some description is probably quite high. I think that's we've had lots of buggies released, and we've had squig units and stuff released and things. I think the chances of another kind of tank unit would be quite cool. Or I suspect what they'll probably do is at some point redo the battle wagon, which is kind of terrifying to think of them replacing that kit. But yeah, I think they maybe would come out with like a new type of battle wagon or something. Or I think at some point we'll see some new tank units for Orks. Certainly, it'd be lovely if it was looted wagons, if they could figure out in some way in this day and age of competitive meta gaming, if they could figure out a way to bring a looted wagon back into the game, because the way they used to do it was that you could choose it from another codex, reduce its ballistic skill, and use it in today's game. That just wouldn't really fly, and so that's a shame. They then did other things with it where they had it and it had different rules and things where you could sort of customize it and stuff, which is what I would like to see. But who knows? But I think the chances of some kind of tank unit being released for the Orks, I think is pretty high. Just who knows when. Horace Lupical 2385 asks, Orks aside, are there any other factions that you do/would play as? Well, this question keeps coming up a lot, doesn't it? Well, yes, I've started Space Marines, and I would consider others if I had A, more time, B, more money. The Mr. Romulus asks, what would a good list be for a 500-point army that isn't combat patrol? Don't like the units for it, and just now getting properly back into the hobby, even if I have followed for years. Okay, Mr. Romulus, well, I agree with you. I don't care for the combat patrol army. Not because that army in itself is a bad army, just because I can't stand what they did with combat patrol, in that they restricted it to, you buy this box, that's your army. Combat patrol has very much become something that is, oh, this is a starting point. This is just buy an army in a box, and that's it. That's your army. You've got stripped down rules. There you go. I don't like that. I liked the old combat patrol where it was a modified rule set of 40k, not for beginners, not for entry level, but for a different way to play. It was designed to represent scouting forces, so you were encouraged within the rules to have lower level sort of vehicles and characters and things leading your army, and you couldn't have 2+ saves, you couldn't have a vehicle of a certain armor value, you couldn't have a character with more than 3 wounds, and you were restricted at the time to 400 points, I think it was. And it was brilliant. It was encouraging you to theme armies around a smaller scouting force, and it gave people the opportunity to dabble in other armies, or to build different kind of lists and play different kinds of games, and let those smaller units shine, because units that were sort of perhaps in the big battles mediocre or not much became like a big deal in those games. And I miss that. If I was ever to do combat patrol, I would like to do it in the way that you asked this question. Make a 500 point list, probably with some restrictions. I think you have to have restrictions, or else someone's just going to choose like one 500 point unit and be a dick about it. Because I think you have to have I don't think it would be too hard. And I was thinking about this the other day actually, about homebrewing my own version of a combat patrol type game, where you would restrict the rules and things, and it would be like, I don't know, it had to be like a vehicle that couldn't have a toughness above a certain level, or was restricted in how many wounds it could have. So you could have things like buggies and bikes and killer cans even and things, but you couldn't have a battle wagon or a kill tank, and same with characters, but no named characters. And they would again restrict them on the amount of wounds. Again, I think it's sensible to have no 2+ saves, and I don't think it would be too hard to put in a couple of restrictions and then create fun, fluffy 500 point scouting forces and things, and theme them accordingly. I think that would be really, really cool. And some of them small games are really good fun, and I miss the old combat patrol. I really, really do. Bestest Michael asks, favourite Ork infantry unit? Shooter boys. Yeah, shooter boys. They're crap. They're utterly crap. They just don't do nothing in game. The shooters are shit. And then when they get into combat, they're still orcs, so they're all right in combat, but without the choppers, they're just nowhere near as good as Slugger Chopper Boys. But I love them because it's a load of orcs tooled up with some cool shooters, sprinkling some big shooters in there and stuff, and I just love it. A load of orcs tooled up with all the DACA, I just think is really cool. I know it's probably quite a boring choice when you've got things like flash gits and knobs and tank busters. I mean, in game terms, for from a competitive sort of gamey standpoint, I think I always enjoyed tank busters when they were good, and things like mega knobs are great. I mean, I like all of them really. Burner boys are awesome as well, but yeah, it's just the humble shooter boy for me is my favourite Ork infantry unit. Them and the Gretchen. Bean Spud 88 asks, can we expect another Best War Boss tournament using the new Codex? Sadly, no. At least not for the foreseeable future. The War Boss channel has actually we've closed our doors, at least for the time being. We are going to continue doing meets, but at next year's meet, the league was good fun. The league was really, really good fun. We all had fun games, we enjoyed it, but it was a bit grindy after a while. We only have so many days at these meets, and if we use up the entire time playing games, it leaves very little time just to kind of hang out and chill and make videos and do other stuff and play other games. So although it was fun, and I'm glad we did it, and I think it's important that we did it, and we did find out once and for all that Sid, the drunken orc, is in fact the biggest boss. It was a lot to do. It was tough, and then even the editing and everything afterwards, that's 15 battle reports plus the award ceremony and everything all to do. It was a tough job on the editing front, on the filming front, on the organising front. It was really good fun, but no, we're not in any rush to do another league. Certainly no time soon anyway. We may revisit that idea at one point in the future with something else, like a doubles league or something perhaps, or in another game like Blood Bowl or something possibly. I mean, we would have done it with the current codex, but literally the codex, my codex, I think I got it the day after we got back from that meet. It was timed at just such a terrible time where it was being released literally right after the meet, which was really annoying actually, because then we were playing with outdated rules for the league, which didn't really matter that much. But yeah, it would have just made the games that little bit more better as well, because we were obviously all playing with the same detachment, the War tribe, and I think it would have added just a lot more flavour if our armies that we had designed had their own detachment rules. Like obviously I would have been using Dread Mob, Dim would have done the same with his Grot army no doubt, and you know, Essex would have obviously gone for the what do they call it, the Speed Freak one, I can't remember what it's called, and Sid would have used the Beast Snagger one and stuff. So yeah, it would have made the games the lists even more fluffy, because they'd have had even more special rules for them, and that would have been really, really good fun. But sadly that was not to be, but we had a great time anyway. But are we going to revisit it anytime soon? No, we're going to do other stuff, and but whatever it is will be great and cool, and I can't wait to do it again. Those annual meet up with the bosses are always good fun, and it's like a date in my calendar that I always look forward to. Drew Furlman 1610 asks, what's the movie you'd never get tired of watching? There's a few. Alien is my favourite movie of all time, and I think it's an absolute sci-fi horror masterpiece, and is just perfection. I absolutely adore that movie for so many reasons. And the following sequels, Aliens, Alien 3, after that it's all like a load of bollocks. Guilty pleasures, some of them, but generally pretty shite movies if we're honest. There's some enjoyment to be had from some of them on a sort of a very dumbed down level, but yeah, it's that first one was an absolute just amazing movie. The Lord of the Rings movies, the extended editions of those are something that I would never get tired of watching. They're just incredible. The original Star Wars trilogy, there's many, and then the other side of things like the Rocky franchise. I've watched all those movies loads of times. They're so inspiring and brilliant, and I just love those stories. And Adam Sandler movies. I'm a big Adam Sandler fan. You can see some of my DVDs and Blu-rays behind me. They're just great. They're just good. Basically Prozac on disc, and you just pop in an Adam Sandler movie, and they're just good, dumb, stupid fun, and I love them. Highlights are Billy Madison is one that I watch a lot. The Longest Yard is a great one. Happy Gilmore. There's so many. I love all those movies. But yeah, there's many. But yeah, absolute number one favourite, Alien. Michael Halligan 6897 asks, what do you understand now that you wish you understood 6+ years ago? Has it really been 6+ years? Because if I've missed that, that's an opportunity missed. I don't actually know how long I've been doing this channel for now. I need to find that out, don't I? I'm pretty sure it's about 5 years. Maybe it is like 6 years now. That's a pretty big anniversary. And I am now on 6+ subscribers as well, which is awesome. What do I understand now that I wish I knew then? What I understand now is that it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. Very early on, I didn't try and copy others. That's not the right thing, but I had an idea in my head, or from watching and stuff, that what a YouTuber is and how they present themselves and how a video is put together and how they talk about it. And you try and sort of do the best job you can. So you kind of emulate that template, I guess, as it were. As I've gone on, most of the videos that I've done that I think are the best stuff I've done, and generally being the more successful videos, is when I've just not given a shit about any of that and just totally been myself. And yeah, I think more of that, because I think doing something, if you can bring anything, I don't know, just do something unique and different to what everyone else is doing. I can never compete with the big channels, their production values, the budgets they have, the space they have. I can't hope to compete with those people trying to do what they do and emulate what they do. So why would I even bother trying? So I've very much gone in my own direction and done my own thing. And I've just learned as I've gone. I just put the camera on one day and I started recording and I started talking and I just went with it. And it's served me pretty well thus far. In other ways, other things that I've learned over the years, is don't trust it. Just don't trust everyone. Don't trust everyone. There are people out there in the sphere that are not necessarily what they seem, and there can be a bit of manipulation and a bit of people sort of well, yeah, I think I've had my fingers burnt a couple of times, and but generally, look, this process has been amazing. I have met great people, made great friends, and it's just been overall like such a positive experience. Yeah, I think I'll just continue to get better, hopefully. I think I'm much better doing this now than what I used to do. I look back on some old videos and I'm like, oh god, it was just crap. And that's honest, that's me just being honest. I look back and I'm like, oh god, you did such a terrible job on that video. There's some old videos that I've like looked at, I'm like, I've already done it before, but I want to redo it because I know I can just do it so much more justice now. But yeah, it's yeah, other than that, just like the technical side of things, just learning how to use sort of the tags and the descriptions and titling your videos and how to make thumbnails better and that kind of thing, and how to market yourself and promote yourself and, you know, do that kind of thing. So yeah, I think I've just learnt a lot. But do I wish I knew anything back then? I just perhaps a little bit of naivety would have been nicer if I'd had less of that early on, and that in certain situations I'd perhaps spoken my mind more when I should have, and didn't, and should have done at the time, and yeah, called certain things out. But yeah, there we go. But generally, not much really. I think I've done all right. Gavin James 1145 asks, so how many orcs does it take to change a light bulb, especially when going to red alert? How many orcs does it take to change a light bulb? I don't know, probably just like one squig herder who'll get, you know, that will just get one of his squigs with like the light up bums, you know, and just got that happening there. And yeah, that would probably do it, wouldn't it? But yeah, I don't know, man. I can't think of a funny, witty line to that. Yeah, you guys tell me. Answers below. How many orcs does it take to change a light bulb? Let me know down in the comment section below. Let's see who can come up with the funniest line for that, eh? There you go. Got out of that one all right, didn't I? FN Inquisitor asks, so I know you're not a competitive player in the slightest, so I don't mean this on a meta type level, but how do you feel about how orcs play in 10th edition? Anything you would change? I think orcs play great in 10th edition. One thing about this codex, and one thing about it from very first reading it, all the various data cards and that, is it feels orky. I feel like it encourages you to play like an orc, and that's that's a big plus for me. I think the detachment rules are really fluffy, really thematic, and they strongly push you and encourage you to create a themed list. So I think that's fantastic, first off. In terms of how powerful they are, I have no idea. I think sometimes they might feel a little bit underpowered compared to other factions, but I couldn't honestly comment or care that much, if I'm honest. What matters to me is that it feels fluffy, it feels orky, it feels like the right way to do it, and it feels like we've got some powerful combinations and things we can do. What would I change? While what I said about detachments is all the massive pluses, it's the trouble with the detachments, the downside of them, is that although they encourage themed lists, they encourage sort of quite restrictive themed lists, because there's only really one detachment in the Codex, and that's the War tribe, the War Horde detachment, that is usable no matter what you pick in your list. With all the other ones, the Dread Mob and etc., only very specific units benefit from the detachment rules. So it if you're trying to build a competitive list, trying to build a powerful list, it kind of makes you second guess not wanting to pick any units that won't benefit from that, because then they're not going to get any of those buffs. And I think also in terms of balancing the game, detachment buffs are quite hard to balance, because how do you balance that? You know, a unit of Squighog boys in a Dread Mob detachment are going to be far less effective and points effective than if they were in a Beast Snagger detachment, or even in a Warhorde detachment. So I think it's quite hard to get the points of certain units right. We saw this with the Mega Knobs when they got a bit of a nerf and a points increase. And I think that's because the Bully Boys detachment was dominating a lot in the tournament scene. But lots of people weren't using them in the Bully Boys detachment, and then they had to suffer because of that as well. So the detachments, it makes it quite hard, because, you know, how many points is something worth? Well, it's kind of worth different points depending on what detachments it's in, isn't it, really, when you think about it? It's a very, very hard thing to balance, and I wish at some point they would just stop trying, because it's an impossible task. You're never gonna balance it, people. You're never ever gonna balance it. And if their answer to that is to adopt this like constantly like online gaming service thing, ugh, I'm okay, thanks. I don't want that. Cranky Wombat 2598 asks, what exactly is it about 40k that got your attention, and how has your perception of the hobby changed over the year? Two questions, I know, but I didn't see a limit. That's fine, buddy. You can ask two questions. Do you mean, when you said over the year, do you mean over this previous year, or do you mean over the years, like long term? I have a suspicion that's what you meant. So I will go with question as intended over question as written, if you will. So what is it about 40k that got me into it? Space Crusade. Space Crusade was the first game I ever played set in the 40k universe, and I adored it. I fell in love with it completely. I was introduced to almost all the factions, Gene Stealers, your Chaos Space Marines, your Imperial Fist, your Ultramarines, your Blood Angels, Orks, Gretchen, Chaos Androids that later became Necrons, and yeah, I was just, you know, I was introduced to so many aspects of 40k. And then later on, friends of mine from school had some Space Marine miniatures, and I saw them, and I was like, I recognise them. They're from Space Crusade, but there's this game you can play where there's this whole world. And then friends at school had like White Dwarf magazines when I would, you know, in high school, and I'd see in there the games like Epic and Man of War and Gorka Morka and all this stuff, and I was just, that was it. I was in. I was sold. And I got the second edition 40k box set for like birthday or Christmas or something, and that was it. I was that sowed the seeds, and but it was the world, it was the imagination, it was the miniatures, it was the fact that You could do. It was the infantry that got me, because I always had like most of us did when we were kids, like had like airfix kits of tanks and planes. I had like the Spitfire. I think everyone's built a bloody airfix Spitfire, haven't they? But I had a Tiger tank as well, and a Sherman that I'd done, and they were okay. But I was like, it'd be cool if you had soldiers, because I always used to collect things like Monster in My Pockets, if anyone of a certain age remembers them, and I liked little figures and things you could collect, and then I used to play games with them, and even like with Lego men and stuff, I used to set them all up in battles and scenes and stuff. So I was doing the hobby really before I did the hobby, and then once I found the real hobby, I was like, this is what I've been looking for, and that was it. I was all in, baby, and never looked back. In terms of how the hobby's changed over the years, I give a brief answer, because it's I could go on for hours about this, but for me, there's a very different audience in the hobby now that I don't think were really there before, and I think we're in danger of losing something quite special about the hobby. And I think it was very much more lore driven before. It was more thematic. It wasn't about building a list to dominate all. It was about building an army to set your imagination, to build a theme, to build a story for that army, a backstory, and take that army on campaigns against other armies, and develop stories on the tabletop, and play thematic games with special missions and quests and things, and build it up, and that is more and more seen as secondary for many people, and I think that's such a shame, because now we're encouraged to just build powerful lists and build powerful combinations and synchronized attachments and enhancements and units that synergize and then dominate tables. And it's like, that does have a certain element of fun to it, and those sort of things can be fun, but it ain't what I got into the hobby for. And I think that's true of many people, and I don't think, I just think I think it's quite sad, and I think it's quite hollow, and I don't think it's a recipe I don't think it's got much longevity to it. I really don't. I really don't. For an individual, I think to really be all in this hobby, you've got to really immerse yourself in the lore and the stories and the imagination of it, and be whisked away to another world, and take you out of reality and whisked away into another world that you can be a part of, and you can have your little part of the story. And that's being lost in today's game, I think. And I think there's a whole range of new people that have come into this hobby that have never really been introduced to that side of it, or never really, they haven't been raised and introduced to the hobby through that, like a lot of us were. I know I certainly was. I'm planning to do a video very soon, actually, covering my very first issue of White Dwarf, and reveal why that was such an important issue of White Dwarf for me, and why it really had a part to play in making me the hobbyist and gamer that I am today. So look out for that one. That one will be coming soon. But there you go. I hope that answered your question all right. Adrian Gagin298 asks, do you want/accept painting commission? Hell no. Hell no. No. I can barely paint my own bloody stuff, let alone anyone else's. No. You would be very unhappy with the service I provided. You would be waiting months, possibly years, to get anything back, and I would have to charge you a ridiculous amount of money, and quite frankly my paint jobs wouldn't be up to the price I would have to charge. So no, No, that will never happen. There's going to be no commissions from me ever. Sorry if anyone wants that. There is thousands of people out there a million times better than me. Ask them. Nick Tomlin 7593 asks, still Bad Moons for life, boss, or are you turning to a different clan? Bad Moons for life, baby. Bad Moons for life. Yeah, no other clans. Snake bites did turn my head a few times, a couple of times. Even when I started building my feral orcs, I was like, oh, this is an opportunity to do some snake bites. But I decided, no, even though they're feral, they're still going to be bad moons. And there's, they can very much be feral bad moons. And so that's what I've done. But yeah, if I ever was to do it, it would be snake bites. But it's very unlikely at this point. I'm bad moons for life, baby. Matthew Schmitz 1765 asks, if you could play against or with any celebrity as a team, who would it be and what army do you think they'd play? Can't pick Henry Cavill. Good question. Who would I pick? I would pick Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg is who I'd pair up with, because he's probably like one of the coolest motherfuckers on the planet, and he would definitely collect bad moons, because he'd be all about that bling, baby. And yeah, I think he would. I think he'd be good fun to play with. We could blaze it up after the game. We could roll some dice, blow some shit up, and I think he'd be down for it. I think bad moons, baby, for shizzle. Ben Runkyman, I think I definitely didn't say that right. 4399. What's your best orc moment? Specifically, my best orc moment. In game, I presume you mean. It's, I don't know, moments. It will be any time Bob wounds or kills something. Always a highlight in any game for me, yeah. It's happened a few times. He's wounded some stuff that he really shouldn't be able to wound, and it's always brilliant when he does it. And if he manages to kill something, oh, happy times, good times, yeah. Anytime Bob does something, that's my best orc moments. And that's it, guys. That is all your questions answered. Hopefully I answered them well enough for you. I thank you very much, everyone who asked a question. Much love. Thank you so much, because this video would have been a bit shit if no one asked a question, or if people just asked really boring, mundane questions. But actually there was some really interesting questions in there, and hopefully it resulted in an interesting video for you guys. Anyway, guys, please I don't know, if you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. There is a join button down there below. While I've got you here, please check the description of this video and any other videos, because it lists all kinds of good stuff in there, like the 40k Ork community, our Facebook group. It lists our Discord, which is a really cool place to come and hang out and hobby, and it lists other Ork channels down there, some really good ones. And check out my latest videos. I'm releasing a lot of stuff lately. I'm releasing a lot of shorts. I'm showcasing a lot of my miniatures off on shorts. And I've got loads more tactics videos coming, and some other discussion piece videos coming in the very near future, so keep an eye out for them. And thank you everyone for the continued support. This channel is nothing without you guys. Much love. And with that said, this is 6 Stevo signing out.